What's going on, guys? So, I felt really bad about trashing the Trash to Treasure, but I do want to say a big thank you to all you guys. I mean, like 99% of the comments were all very positive. You guys are very supportive, so thank you. It just really sucks to have to just cancel a project, basically, to give up on a project. You know, nobody wants to do that, but I'm very glad that I did, and feeling much more better now that that's kind of off my chest, or off my back. Anyway. But I did want to do a kind of a sort of consolation prize for you guys, so I thought I was gonna do this, and it's not necessarily Trash to Treasure. I don't want to keep the name, but maybe think of a new name for this series. Anyway, I don't know, but whatever I come up with, it'll be on the title of this video. But this is, of course, the old 1980s Real Type Color Gelgoog kit. So I've got a number of these older 80s kits, a handful of them, and I've always wanted to, try one of them out, so I figure it's a good time to do that, because this is also sort of Trash to Treasure, but I'm not going to do it in like the same way where I'm doing a ton of modification. Basically, I'm just going to be just making this kit look nice. So that's kind of the main goal of this. So this is, of course, being an old 80s kit. Straight out of the box, it's not going to look very good. Even painted up, it's not going to look very good, like proportional wise, unless you do a ton of work onto it, and that's not what we're going to be doing. Basically, what I'm going to be doing is just trying to just make it look good as is for the most part. That's kind of the main thing. So I do want to paint it up, and the really cool thing about these two is that they also come with some beautiful water slides in there as well too. One of the great things of these old MSV kits, some of the old 1/44 scale MSV kits come with some great water slide decals, but then I think all of the Real Type Color 100 scale kits also come with water slide decals, so that's awesome. And so I'm also going to be using this as a chance to try out the famous Max Watanabe painting style. You guys have probably heard of it, but some of you guys maybe tried it. I've never actually tried it. I've been meaning to try it forever, and I figure this is a good chance. Why not? It's like a really cheap kit. I think what this is, like 800 yen for a 100 scale kit. Again, doesn't look that great as far as like the design and the proportions, but hey, let's just try to make it look cool. We'll do our best with it and have some fun with it. So I think this will be a much quicker, much more fun project, much less involved project, but still it'll be kind of in the same vein, basically kind of like Trash to Treasure in theme. But anyway, let's just go ahead and crack it open and get to work. So alright, one thing that I love about these old, especially the Real Type kits, is the artwork there looking very cool. I love this artwork, and then all the markings and everything on there. So MSV with the Real Type colors, very cool. Got some information over here on the side, and yeah, just a beautiful box art there. The Gundam logo down there. Interestingly, no Bandai logo here on the front of the box. I know, like, this line of these Real Type 100 scale kits, I believe none of them have the Bandai logo on the front, which is kind of interesting. On the ends, though, you do have the Bandai logo there, as well as the Gundam logo and just the Real Type Gelgoog 100 scale Zeon's heavy mobile suit over there. And on this side of the box, pretty interesting, you have the color guide, and it gives you a few different options. So this is the normal colors that it gives you, at least the normal Real Type colors. And then you also have the Night Fighter colors, which are pretty interesting. There's like black and like dark blue. And then the Jungle Type, which is getting really interesting with some blue and kind of dark green, brown camo there on some of the parts, so that's pretty wild. I don't think I'm going to be going with any of these particular color schemes. I'll probably do something a little bit different, but those do look pretty interesting. Over here on the other side, just to look at what the kit in just the normal type color schemes, normal Real Type color schemes, are going to look like painted front and back. So you can see it does come with the rifle, the shield, and the beam Naginata there on there as well too. I believe we do have effect parts for that, although they're surely not clear. Then we do have the list price down here is, again, like I said, 800 yen for this. So a 100 scale kit for less than 10 bucks is pretty great, but as things go, there's a reason why it's so cheap, because it's super, super simple. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at those water slide decals. These also looking very nice. So you got some rank markings here, Xeon markings, some numbers, and a bunch of these lining bits. And I believe these are kill markings there as well too. So a lot of really great markings for this, and you'll definitely have some leftovers as well too that you can use for other kits, which is nice. Alright, let's find our manual here. So one thing I love about these old kits, it's pretty funny how the parts list also doubles as the color guide. So you can see everything's like colored in its proper colors as it's meant to be. So your color guide is here showing you that on the individual parts, rather than showing you the colors on the actual built kit. And then the rest of this all just goes through the construction. Here's a little bit about how to apply the water slide decals. That's easy enough. And the construction should be pretty straightforward. There's a lot of text in here, very interestingly, how like the construction is here and then all the text is here on the side. It's kind of interesting, very unique way of going about that. Let's see. Oh, then we do have some built painted images here where you can see what that's going to look like front and back, and then kind of like walking from each side. So definitely going to switch out the hands on this. I do have some different hands that we can use for this because the hands are pretty awful. I mean, the kit, it's not going to look that great, but especially the hands, there's something at least we can do about that. We've got a grand total of 3 runners for this kit, which are not labeled A, B, and C. It's just that all the parts are numbered 1 through, I think 58 is maybe the last one, so you just have to check the number of that. But here you can see basically parts for the legs. On the second runner there, some more parts for the bottom of the feet, and then some head parts, weapons parts, arm parts, hand parts. And then our third runner in this dark green color for the shield, skirts, chest parts, some weapons parts, and little bits on there as well too. So basically for now, I'm just going to start on the construction of this, and then it's going to be something where basically everything's going to need to be glued, so it's going to be quite the process. So not that complicated a process, but different than usual. So I'll get started on that, and then I'll come back and update you guys on how it's going. Alright, so I've been going through just getting some of the first number of seam lines gotten rid of, as this kit is basically just seam lines everywhere. So like here on the leg, for example, let's just take a look at one of these. You got a seam on the thigh, a seam on the lower leg, and then a seam on the foot. And then we do also have a piece that will fit up underneath the foot here as well too, up on there, which I'll add in a little bit later. Just for now, I'm just kind of leaving that out, and it might be, there we go. But I'll go ahead and remove the seam on the thigh and the foot first, because those are both held on here by the lower leg. They both just plug into the lower leg there. So I need to remove those so that I can, sand everything well, and I'm gonna sand them a little bit more here a little bit later. They're just kind of roughly removed at the moment. So once those are all cleaned up, then I can remove the seam on this lower leg, because then the top and bottom parts will be locked in there. I could modify that so that the feet and the thigh could be separated and won't be locked together, but I'm gonna be painting it all just by hand, so it's fine that everything is just all locked together. But so before I do that, I need to make a modification here onto the foot because of the stance that I want to do with this. Like I said, I don't want to necessarily make a whole lot of changes, but I want it to be able to stand in a cool position. It's actually the way that the hip joint works there, the legs are able to get wide enough that for like the stance that I want like that. The problem is that the feet aren't flat, and in order to make the feet flat, that's where we're going to have to make a little bit of a modification, which I think should be pretty easy. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And in order to help you guys visualize it, maybe it would help that I draw it. So basically you have your foot part, which is like this, and it has 2 pegs here on the sides, and then those fit into parts here on the inside of the leg, like that. You guys get what I mean? But what we're gonna do is we're going to cut this one off, and then this one we're going to replace that with a ball joint, so then this will be able to move on that hinge there on that ball joint, and then we'll be able to turn. This is the inside and this is the outside, I should say. So we should be able to turn the foot on an angle so that it should be able to sit flat, if that makes sense. So this is the inside peg, which we're going to remove, and then this is the outside peg that we're going to turn into a ball joint. And what I'm going to be using is basically just a ball joint from the Balden arm set. It's actually just almost the right fit for going right into here. This is where that's going to fit into, and I need to shave down the ball joint slightly. It almost fits in there perfectly. I just need to sand this a little bit just to make it slightly smaller, and that should fit into there just fine. But first, let's go ahead and just remove these pegs here on the foot. And yes, just to make this job go a bit faster, I am going to be using my big boy saw, so I don't want anybody's feelings to get hurt by the fact that I'm using a big saw rather than a little one. Alright, so we're going to have to do a little bit of improvisation now too, because I don't know if my plan is going to work out exactly how I intended. So this would be fitting up in there normally, but the goal is to make this so that it can turn more inwards. But the problem is not necessarily the pegs, the problem is that the inside of the foot is hitting the inside of the leg right in here. So I'm going to try to hold this so you guys can see what I mean. So it's like that, and then turn inward like that. It's hitting the inside of the leg. So I think what we can do is then just make this piece actually a little bit shorter, where the ball joint will fit into, cut that back a little bit so that the foot is actually a little bit more out to this side a little bit, towards the more of the center kind of actually, and then bend towards the middle. That should work better. In the meantime too, the other thing we need to do is make it so that this new ball joint can plug in here to the foot, as it is that's not going to work. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite fit into that hole. That would have been nice. But instead, what we're going to do is I'm just going to stick a piece of plot plate onto here, and then we can drill a hole through that and then just pop this right into that instead. So we just need a piece with the proper size hole. So got my little plot plate bits made here. Just kind of little circles, not super precise, but plenty well enough. So just go ahead and glue these onto here. The reason why I say it doesn't really matter that they're not super precise is because they're basically not going to be able to be seen at all. They're not going to be visible. So there we go. That's going to be looking like that. Actually, I said I was going to sand down that ball joint a little bit. I should have done that before sticking it in there. Oh well. So after those are both done, and then on the inside here, like the outside where the ball joint is going to plug into, I cut that down and then actually made it at a little bit of an angle too, so that that fits nicely into there. And this one's actually a little bit kind of loose at the moment, but that's okay. It's all going to be glued later on eventually. So and then this side also, I had to cut this one down on the inside there as well too, just so that's not in the way. And then we can go ahead and put this together and test out our stance. And yeah, the legs are gonna be a little bit wobbly as those lower parts still aren't connected together, but as you can see, we can get a nice wide stance there, and the feet are flat on the ground. So yeah, I need to get some tape or something on that, but anyway, at least that was a successful modification to get a wider stance. That's gonna work out just fine for that, which means now we can move on to the next part here. As kind of if we just make our way up, then the next part would be the body, which is basically made up of a couple pieces. You have this top part here, which also had a seam line, so I had to get rid of that, and that's going to take some more work to get rid of that seam line on there. And then the midsection, which is kind of like, this is the top of the waist, and then this is the bottom of the torso, and they kind of have this lock mechanism, and they kind of put them on sideways and then turn it 90 degrees. And then those are going to be locked together for the top and the bottom half. But we're going to be doing the power stance, which requires a little bit of an ab crunch. So, you know, you have the legs straight down and a little bit out. And then you need a little bit of an ab crunch, which obviously this doesn't have. So we're going to add that by basically adding a little bit onto the bottom of this. So we're going to be removing this locking mechanism because, again, later these are just going to be glued together, so it doesn't matter, and they're going to be, you know, just painted, so we don't need that to lock together. These can just be permanently set together. But we just need to, what I'm going to do is add some plot plate. Just, this is flat, so it's going to be super easy. Just add a few pieces of plot plate onto the bottom of this, and then just file it down at an angle, so that rather than being flat like this, like these two pieces here, it's going to be set a little bit like that. Basically going to be adding a plot plate kind of wedge between the two of these to kind of jack up the front, or jack up like the back of the torso anyway. Does that make sense? All right, so let's go ahead and do it. So I'm actually gonna use some pieces of pla board. It's 2 millimeter thick, so ultimately at the back, it's gonna be adding 4 millimeters height to the back, and then probably like 1 at the front. So there's our stacks laid on there. Now we just need to get that some time to dry, and then we can trim that down to the proper size and everything, get that all lined up. But so let's just move on then real quick while that's curing to the head. Now the head is actually meant to be closed in here with this seam line. As you can see, there's kind of like that ring around there. That's where this is supposed to be closed around that. So like while you're assembling the body, you're supposed to have the head plugged in there. Obviously, I didn't do that. So what I want to do is basically cut away that ring of plastic around the edge there. There we go, like that. So, and again, in case it wasn't very obvious, there was a seam line right down the middle of the head that was made up of 2 pieces that sandwiched together. And there is a piece for the commander antenna. I'm not going to use that. I think I'm not going to make it a commander type, just make it a standard type. And interestingly, the thing about that too is that there's nowhere to like actually plug that into. You just kind of have to glue that straight onto the head there. So just as a tip about that. Anyway, so this just fits right onto the body like that. But again, we're going for the power pose, which means that the body is going to have like a little bit of ab crunch, which is what we're adding with the plates in between the torso section there. But also the head needs to not be just flat on the top of the body. I also want to have the head a little bit up and angled down a little bit too, so you get that really mean look out of it. Now with a kind of derpy, very wide boy head such as this, it's going to be hard to get it really looking that mean. But if we can get that up and angled forward a little bit, it'll just kind of add to the look a little bit for us. So what I think we can do is actually add a piece of plot plate on the inside of this, up underneath there, sort of like making a stage for this. And then we can add a little piece up underneath here too, so that basically will move that up and add a little bit of an angle like that. Should be simple enough. I'll just use this little piece of scrap plot plate I have laying around here, just enough to basically set that up underneath there like that. That's kind of all we really need that to do. And then real simply, all I've done here with the bottom of the head, I actually don't think we're going to need to add any plot plate on the underside of the neck here. I've just filed that at an angle so you can see how like that was just flat before, but now there's an angle for that peg underneath the bottom of the head there, kind of that we formed. And that will just sit right on into there. Later on, we can just glue that on. And I think that'll give us a nice little bit of a forward angle there for the head. It'll be sitting up and forward a little bit. That should look pretty nice. So I think we're kind of done with that. All right, moving on. While we're here on the torso, one thing that I did want to add to this was a backpack. So this kit doesn't have any sort of backpack. Basically, all it is just here on the back is where you plug the beam naginata handle into the back of that like that. But it's just, I mean, it just seems weird. I mean, I know the Gelgoog many times doesn't have any sort of backpack like this, but I just don't really like it. So I was looking through my spare parts and everything and looking for something that could act as some sort of backpack for it. I wanted something simple, but also something not, you know, like simple in shape. And then also just something that would sort of match the whole aesthetic of this kit. And I found this part, which I can tell is from like the midsection of some kit. I can't tell exactly from what though. I don't recall. Doesn't ring any bells. But anyway, it's from a midsection of some 1/100 scale kit or something. But I think we can cut some pieces off. Cut those pieces off the top of there, and then this should fit on here pretty well just as a simple backpack. We'll also cut off this peg and then cut the bottom of this a little bit. Just add a couple of little extra parts on there just to make it kind of fit the bill. But I think this will actually work really well. So, like I said, we'll just lop a couple pieces off of here first. Here and here. And so where that peg was cut off in the center actually created a hole, but that's okay. It's going to be covered up later. Now when we fit this onto the backpack, say it's going to be fitting onto here like this, it's actually hanging down a little bit, which I don't want because then the part up underneath here is going to be like that, right? You can probably combine these two. Now the reason why I didn't want to stick these two together is because I knew I wanted to stick that plot plate piece up in there, but now that that's there, I think I can probably glue these together, save myself a little bit of headache. But when this backpack is glued on there, it's hanging off the bottom of that, which I don't want. I don't want that much hanging off there. So what I'm going to do is cut this, basically cut it here and then here like that. And then basically all this section will all be cut off of there like that, if that makes sense. And then we'll put a new piece there, and then that's where we can add some thruster bells in there to make it look just kind of like your standard kind of 2 thruster bell backpack. And we'll add a couple of option pieces onto the back of here just to make it look, you know, like somewhat detailed, but again, we don't want to overly detail it because then it won't match with the rest of the kit. All right, let's cut off the bottom of there like so, like I was saying, and then I think that will be just about right to fit onto the back of there. As you can see, it's like a flat surface fitting onto a round surface, so it's not like a super tight fit on there. And I might try to fix that a little bit, but also maybe not, because again, I think it kind of fits, I mean, with the whole style and just the way these kits are, a lot of times you'll have this where stuff doesn't exactly fit on there just right. I mean, like that's just kind of how they made it back then. So I think honestly, with that not being like a perfect super flush fit against the plastic, it actually kind of fits with the look and the whole style of these kits a little bit. But I think I'll try working on this a little bit just to make that a little bit more flush. But basically that's kind of basically it. So I've got a piece of plot plate on the bottom of there, then later on I can trim that up, and then we'll add the thruster bells and their detail parts onto that. So again, with that one we'll just set it off to the side for now, and then we can move on then to kind of the last main section is just kind of the arms and then the rifle as opposed to. For the arm, we had this upper arm part, which of course had a seam line there on that, and then this part which actually plugs into the body, just like this here. And actually, according to the menu, we're supposed to have this, it's kind of like with the neck, how like the arm is supposed to be installed in there at the same time when you're putting the body together. But again, I just didn't need to do that for my purposes. So the inside part of like the arm connection I just already glued in there, and this part will then just glue right into there like that. And then the forearm, these parts also of course have a seam line down the middle of there, which again is just like with the legs. I'm just waiting to sand the upper arm parts completely so that that's all good before I work on the lower arm parts, just so those aren't interfering with each other. And then this part here on the side of the arm just sticks right onto there, so that's easy enough. There's already holes there for you for that and everything, so that's easy to just pop right onto there. There's a little detail part that goes in the back of there, but not in the front, so I've been thinking about adding something in the front or not. I'm not sure. The way it is, it's just kind of like that, and then you have just kind of this empty space in the front. But I think maybe adding a little gun barrel in there. I think on the original kit, or like on the Gelgoog's design, this is not a gun, but I think we could turn it into like a little, like a beam emitter there pretty easily, and it would just be, you know, just adding a little just piece of tube plot plate in there just to make it look like a little gun barrel in there for a beam emitter. What do you guys think? I'll leave it up to you guys. Should I make this into a gun emitter, a beam emitter in there, or just leave it as like a vent? What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below, and we'll either do that in the next video or not. It's easy enough to do that. It's a simple modification. So as for the hands, like I said, I'm not going to be using the hands for this, but here's what they look like. They look pretty awful. That said, they do kind of have like a ball joint in there. The connection piece is like kind of on a very simple ball joint, which plugs into the hand, so you can kind of move that around a little bit, sort of, which is not too bad, but I'm not going to use those. What I'm going to use is some of these 80s power hands. Now this is a set that you can get in a couple of different sizes. This is the larger size, I believe, which is meant kind of for 100 scale, which are notably much smaller than the hands included with the kit. So you can see there's the size difference. They're much smaller, but these hands look gigantic on the kit, honestly. Like if here's the arm, you can see just the hand looks ridiculously large. So I think even though these are much smaller and they might end up looking possibly slightly too small, I think it's a much better fit ultimately, so I think this one will be totally fine. So anyway, we're going to use the for the right side, the rifle holding hand, which as you can see has the rifle handle already molded in together with this. That means we're going to have to modify this because the kit also has the hand molded onto the rifle. So basically we're going to cut that off, and then we have to stick this on there instead, which again shouldn't be too hard. Let's go ahead and go for it. Alright, so I've got the hand removed off of the rifle here, and also this hand cleaned up a little bit. And I guess I should mention too, in case that wasn't obvious, that this is a resin part. Actually, these are resin hand option parts, and I've got the one for the opposite side as well too, just going to be a closed fist. Anyway, we need to make this so this is going to fit on there. It can't be that far apart, so you can see this kind of trigger guard part there almost kind of lines up like that, but then the hand is like way below the rifle. It looks kind of weird. It needs to be much higher up into there, somewhere like that. So this trigger guard part is going to have to go. I'm going to cut that off and then maybe put a new one on there later, or not. I don't know. It's the Gelgoog rifle. It is kind of meant to have that, so we'll probably replace that. But for now, I think we can go ahead and just cut that off of there. What we need to do is make a way to get this higher up into there. Now the two options would be either cut this or make this hole bigger to fit that up into there. And I think what I'm going to do is just make this hole a little bit bigger if I can, so that this just slides up into there. I think that'll be easier, possibly. And I still might, if this is still too long, I might have to cut this down a little bit as well too. But I think we're just going to try to cut this hole a little bit more so that this fits up into there. Alright, pretty great success there. Cut that hole a little bit larger, and also cut the top of this. Cut like 1 or 2 millimeters off the top of that just to make it a little bit shorter, because it was not fitting in there quite right. But then that will just slot right into place up into there like that, which is looking very nice. Now the only problem is just that there's still a seam line, obviously the two halves of the gun, so I need to glue this all together. I'm gonna leave this out while I do that. Glue this, get this all squared away, and then we can glue this part up into here. And then finally I can make a new just little trigger guard here. Just add a little strip of plot plate there, just kind of connecting from this point up right underneath the finger there. That'll be simple enough, I think. What do you guys think? Or leave it without it, or add that back in. I don't know, what do you guys think? I don't mind it at all without that connecting trigger guard piece right there, but I don't know, if you guys think it should have it, then I'll take your guys' cue on that, I suppose. But for me, I don't know, I could go either way, honestly. It's just kind of fine. But the other problem then that we have, the last thing then, is just how this hand is going to fit into here, because obviously that's not quite right. And so guys, we're going to rely on the old use what you've got. So we've already got a peg here, which we know is the right size to fit into that forearm, so we don't need to really change anything except put this peg into here. Now it would be an easy thing to just drill a hole into that add the peg into there, but then there's going to be a little bit too much wrist there. So what we're going to do is just basically cut down some of this wrist, then drill a hole, cut this peg off there, and then use it to go between these two. Now I also just need to make sure that that hole is a common size. Now because it's an older kit, it might not be like the standard 3mm, so just kind of testing this out, because this is 3mm and it is just kind of barely fitting into there, but is a little bit tight, and that's already not super tight in there actually, so I guess that should be right. So it does seem to be probably right around 3mm. It might be something like 2.9 or something like that, silly, but I think a 3mm drill should work for us for that. Easy enough. Just cut that down, drill a hole, pop that peg into there, and there we've got our new connection, which will just fit right into there like that. Looking so much better. Oh yes, definitely. The only problem is that the angle. Now obviously the problem with the Gelgoog rifle here is it's got this big long part sticking out the back that could interfere with our forearm, or which is very likely to interfere with our forearm. So I'm a little bit concerned about this, because as you can see, once that is on there and the rifle is all put together, for demonstration's sake, would have been easier to glue this ahead of time, but anyway, you guys get the idea. It's going to be running into the forearm there, which I don't like. The only option then is to have it holding it at an angle, which I also don't really like, because it looks a bit awkward holding it at a weird angle like that. So I'm thinking of just making the back of this collapsed, because I think somewhere, I swear I've seen images that the Gelgoog beam rifle does collapse. The back end of it collapses down, but I was looking and I couldn't find any pictures of it. So if you guys see any pictures, send me a link or something like that, or send me a photo somewhere online. I'm pretty sure it does that technically in Canon. The back end does collapse, but I'm not exactly sure how it does it, if it kind of goes in and like is sideways or something. But I think what I'm gonna do is just basically cut out this middle section of that and have this like turned to the side and then collapsed in, so that it'll be kind of going horizontal and it'll be much shorter, if that makes sense, as like the collapsed back end of that. Or I could be wrong and it doesn't collapse at all, and I could be totally ruining it, but I think that's probably going to be what I'm going to do with that. The other thing that I'm going to have to modify with the rifle is adding something in here for the camera. It doesn't have anything in there, so I'll just use like a round gem part. Could use one of those ones that I just recently got that should fit into there, so not a big deal getting something to fit in there. That should be easy enough. Alright, so for now anyway, that's glued, and after doing some more checking and conferring with my ever so wonderful Patreon supporters over there on our Discord, we did confirm that there is a version of the rifle with no back end at all, and that was the version that was included with the Master Grade High Mobility Type Uma Lightning's Gelgoog. It has a little bit more kind of going on the front as well too, so it's a little bit different design, but it doesn't have the back end like this. It's basically just cut off there, so that's probably what I'll just end up doing with mine. I'll just turn it into the shortened version. I would just making sure that something like that did exist in Canon, and if it does exist in Canon, then it can exist for mine as well too. So what I'll end up doing is just cut off the back end of that later on. For now, it's basically going to kind of be it for today. That's like all the major modifications we needed to make. There is one thing that I would need to make a modification with the shield, but it's a very small thing, and we'll go over that in the next video, where we'll basically just be then going on. I'll have some more sanding done and some more of the refining to do, and we'll basically be finishing up all the modifications and refinement in the next video, and then the third video is when we'll start to get into the painting of that. So for today, guys, that is going to be it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Hope this was interesting for you guys. If you have any questions, of course, do feel free to ask those down below. And until next time, hope you guys are all having a great day. I'll see y'all later. Bye, guys.